What if the real secret to wealth isn't hard work, luck, or even intelligence, but something far more subtle, something quietly shaping your reality every single day? Today, we uncover a powerful principle inspired by Dr. Joseph Murphy that most people overlook. Yet those who apply it begin to see results faster than they ever imagined. This is not just another theory. It's a hidden law of the mind that can transform your financial destiny from the inside out. Most people spend their entire lives trying to fix their financial situation by changing what they do without ever questioning what they deeply believe. They wake up earlier, work harder, learn new skills, chase opportunities, and still feel stuck in a cycle that never quite breaks. What goes unnoticed is that beneath every action, beneath every decision, there is an invisible force quietly directing the outcome. That force is not effort, not luck, not timing, but belief, specifically the belief stored in the subconscious mind. These beliefs are not loud or obvious. They do not announce themselves. Instead, they operate in silence, shaping how you see opportunities, how you respond to challenges, and even what you think you deserve. From a very early age, ideas about money begin to settle into the subconscious. A child who hears money is hard to earn does not just hear a sentence. That idea becomes a filter through which all future experiences are interpreted. Another child who grows up hearing wealth is natural and abundant develops a completely different internal framework. Neither of them consciously chooses these beliefs, yet both of them will spend years acting them out. This is why two people with the same education, the same environment, and even the same opportunities can end up with completely different financial realities. One is not necessarily working harder than the other. One is simply aligned internally with a different expectation. The subconscious mind does not argue or debate. It accepts what is repeatedly impressed upon it and works to make that impression real. If someone constantly thinks, "I never have enough," the subconscious treats that as an instruction, not a complaint. It begins to guide behavior, attention, and decisions in a way that proves that statement true. Opportunities may appear, but they are overlooked. Risks that could lead to growth feel uncomfortable and are avoided. Even when money comes in, it somehow slips away, reinforcing the same cycle again. It is not coincidence, it is a pattern being executed with precision. On the other hand, when a person holds the belief that wealth is possible and natural for them, their subconscious begins to organize their reality differently. They notice opportunities others ignore. They take action with a sense of certainty rather than fear. They persist where others give up, not because they are more disciplined, but because their internal world supports the outcome they are moving toward. Their behavior is not forced, it is aligned. This alignment creates a kind of momentum that feels almost effortless from the outside, even though it is deeply rooted in a change that happened within. One of the most overlooked aspects of subconscious belief is that it does not respond to what you want. It responds to what you feel is true. A person can consciously say, "I want to be rich," while subconsciously believing, "People like me never get rich." In that case, the subconscious belief will always win because it operates at a deeper level. This is why so many people feel frustrated. They set goals, they visualize success, they even take action, yet something keeps pulling them back. that something is not external resistance, it is internal contradiction. The subconscious mind is simply following the strongest impression it has been given. Feelings play a critical role in this process. It is not enough to repeat words mechanically. The subconscious responds to emotional intensity. A belief that is charged with emotion becomes far more powerful than one that is stated without feeling. This is why negative financial beliefs often take such a strong hold. They are usually formed during moments of stress, fear, or embarrassment, times when emotion is high. A single experience of financial struggle, if deeply felt, can create a lasting impression that influences behavior for years. The mind is not trying to harm. It is trying to protect by avoiding similar experiences, even if that avoidance limits growth. To understand how deeply this operates, consider how people react to sudden financial opportunities. Some individuals hesitate, overthink, and ultimately withdraw, even when the opportunity is clearly beneficial. Others step forward with confidence, ready to act. The difference is not in the opportunity itself, but in the internal programming. One person's subconscious is signaling danger, while the other's is signaling possibility. These signals are not conscious decisions. They are automatic responses shaped by belief. Another important dimension is identity. The subconscious does not just store beliefs about money, it stores beliefs about who you are in relation to money. If someone sees themselves as someone who struggles, that identity becomes a blueprint for behavior. Every action, every decision, and every reaction begins to align with that identity. Changing external circumstances without changing identity is like trying to build a new structure on an old foundation. It may stand for a while, but eventually the old pattern reasserts itself. Repetition is the mechanism through which these beliefs are strengthened or changed. The mind learns through consistent exposure. Just as negative beliefs were formed through repeated thoughts and experiences, positive beliefs can be formed in the same way. However, the key difference lies in awareness. Most negative programming happens unconsciously, while positive reprogramming requires deliberate effort. It involves choosing thoughts intentionally, repeating them with emotion, and reinforcing them through aligned action. There is also a subtle but powerful interaction between belief and attention. What you believe determines what you notice. A person who believes that opportunities are scarce will unconsciously filter out possibilities that do not fit that narrative. Their attention becomes selective, focusing only on evidence that confirms their belief. This creates a feedback loop where belief shapes perception, and perception reinforces belief. Breaking this loop requires a conscious shift in focus, deliberately seeking evidence that supports a new, more empowering belief. Behavior in this context becomes a reflection rather than a cause. People often try to change behavior first, hoping that results will follow. But behavior that is not supported by belief tends to be inconsistent. It requires constant effort and discipline, which can be exhausting over time. When belief changes, behavior follows naturally. Actions feel less forced. Decisions become clearer, and persistence becomes easier because it is supported by an internal sense of certainty. Another layer to consider is how beliefs influence risk perception. Wealth creation often involves stepping into the unknown, making decisions without guaranteed outcomes. For someone with limiting beliefs, uncertainty feels threatening. The subconscious interprets it as a risk to safety and stability, triggering hesitation or avoidance. For someone with empowering beliefs, the same uncertainty is interpreted as potential. The emotional response is different, leading to different actions and ultimately different results. It is also worth noting that subconscious beliefs do not operate in isolation. They interact with habits, environment, and social influences. The people you spend time with, the content you consume, and the conversations you engage in all contribute to reinforcing or challenging existing beliefs. If someone is surrounded by negativity about money, it becomes harder to maintain a positive internal framework. Conversely, exposure to empowering ideas and examples can accelerate the process of belief transformation. The process of uncovering these hidden beliefs requires honesty and reflection. It involves paying attention to recurring thoughts, emotional reactions, and patterns of behavior. Questions like, what do I truly believe about money? Or how do I feel when I think about wealth? Can reveal underlying assumptions that are otherwise invisible. These assumptions often appear so normal that they go unquestioned, yet they hold significant influence over outcomes. Once identified, these beliefs can be challenged and replaced. This does not happen overnight. The subconscious mind resists sudden change, especially if the new belief contradicts long-held patterns. Consistency becomes essential. Repeating new thoughts, visualizing desired outcomes, and taking small, aligned actions gradually create new neural pathways. Over time, the new belief begins to feel more natural, and the old one loses its hold. Visualization is a particularly effective tool because it engages both thought and emotion. When a person vividly imagines themselves experiencing financial success, the subconscious begins to treat that image as a form of reality. This reduces resistance and makes it easier to act in ways that align with that vision. However, the effectiveness of visualization depends on the level of emotional engagement. It is not about seeing the image once, it is about feeling it repeatedly until it becomes familiar. Language also plays a role in shaping belief. The words people use when talking about money reflect and reinforce their internal state. Phrases like, "I can't afford it," or "money is always a problem," may seem harmless, but they carry a message that the subconscious absorbs. Shifting language to more empowering expressions can gradually influence belief. Instead of focusing on limitation, the emphasis shifts to possibility and solution. Patience is often misunderstood in this process. It is not about waiting passively for change to happen, but about allowing the internal transformation to take root. Just as negative beliefs were formed over time, positive beliefs require consistent reinforcement. The goal is not immediate perfection, but gradual alignment. Each small shift contributes to a larger change in perception and behavior. There is a moment in this process where something subtle yet profound begins to happen. The new belief starts to feel less like an effort and more like a natural state. Decisions that once felt difficult become easier. Opportunities that once seemed out of reach begin to appear within grasp. This is not because the external world has suddenly changed, but because the internal lens through which it is viewed is shifted. Understanding that your subconscious beliefs silently control your financial reality is not about assigning blame or creating pressure. It is about recognizing where true influence lies. External circumstances matter, but they are often shaped by internal patterns. By bringing awareness to these patterns and intentionally reshaping them, it becomes possible to move beyond cycles that once seemed permanent. The change does not start with what you do, but with what you accept as true. And as that truth evolves, everything connected to it begins to move in a different direction. Most people are taught to chase wealth as something external, something that exists outside of them, waiting to be earned, captured, or discovered through effort and persistence. They are conditioned to believe that money is the result of actions alone, that if they simply do more, push harder, and endure longer, wealth will eventually follow. What rarely gets explained is that before wealth can ever take form in the physical world, it must first be accepted in the mental world. It must exist as a certainty within, not just as a desire, not just as a wish, but as something that feels natural, expected, and almost inevitable. There is a quiet but powerful difference between wanting wealth and accepting wealth. Wanting comes from a place of lack. It carries an underlying message that something is missing, that the current state is incomplete. Acceptance, on the other hand, carries a completely different energy. It does not argue with reality or resist it. Instead, it redefines it from within. When a person accepts wealth mentally, they are not pretending or forcing belief. They are shifting their internal baseline of what is normal for them. This shift is subtle, but it changes everything that follows. The mind operates in a way that seeks consistency between what is believed internally and what is experienced externally. If there is a mismatch, tension is created. For example, if someone consciously desires wealth but subconsciously feels that wealth is out of reach or undeserved, that tension will manifest in hesitation, doubt, and inconsistent action. The person may start moving toward opportunities, but something pulls them back. They may earn money, but find ways to lose it. This is not random. It is the mind attempting to resolve the conflict by returning to what feels familiar. Acceptance removes this conflict. When wealth is accepted mentally, there is no internal resistance to receiving it. The idea of having more money no longer feels foreign or uncomfortable. It begins to feel appropriate, even expected. This internal harmony allows actions to flow more naturally. Decisions are made with clarity rather than fear. Opportunities are approached with confidence rather than skepticism. The external results begin to align with the internal state because there is no longer a contradiction to resolve. One of the most important aspects of this process is understanding that acceptance is not based on current circumstances. Many people make the mistake of waiting for evidence before they allow themselves to believe. They think, once I start earning more, then I will believe I can be wealthy. But the mind does not work in that direction. External evidence is often a reflection of internal belief, not the cause of it. Waiting for proof keeps the belief in a state of dependency, always tied to something outside. True acceptance happens independently of current conditions. It is a decision made within, regardless of what is visible at the moment. This can feel counterintuitive because it challenges the way most people interpret reality. The physical world appears solid and undeniable, while thoughts and beliefs seem abstract and uncertain. Yet, when observed closely, it becomes clear that perception itself is shaped by belief. Two people can experience the same situation and interpret it completely differently based on their internal framework. One may see limitation while the other sees opportunity. The difference lies not in the situation, but in the mindset that processes it. Emotional alignment plays a critical role in moving from desire to acceptance. It is not enough to say, "I accept wealth," while feeling doubt or discomfort. The subconscious mind responds more strongly to emotion than to words. Acceptance must be felt, even if only in small moments at first. This feeling can be cultivated through imagination, reflection, and deliberate focus. When a person allows themselves to genuinely experience what it would feel like to live with financial ease, the mind begins to register that state as familiar. Repetition strengthens this familiarity until it becomes a default expectation. There is also a shift in identity that accompanies true acceptance. Wealth is no longer seen as something that belongs to others or something that requires extraordinary circumstances. It becomes part of how a person sees themselves. This does not mean arrogance or entitlement. It means alignment. The individual begins to think, act, and respond in ways that are consistent with someone who expects abundance rather than scarcity. This identity influences countless small decisions throughout the day, each one reinforcing the overall direction. Another layer of this concept involves the way people interpret time. When wealth is only seen as a future goal, it remains distant and uncertain. The mind treats it as something separate from the present moment. Acceptance brings it into the present, not in a physical sense, but in a psychological one. The person begins to operate as if wealth is already part of their life, even if it is not yet fully manifested externally. This does not involve ignoring reality or denying challenges. It involves approaching those challenges from a different internal position, one that is grounded in expectation rather than doubt. This internal position changes how setbacks are perceived. Instead of being seen as evidence that wealth is unattainable, they are interpreted as temporary obstacles within a larger trajectory. The emotional response shifts from discouragement to problem solving. This resilience is not forced. It emerges naturally from the belief that the outcome is still valid and achievable. The person remains engaged rather than withdrawing, which increases the likelihood of eventual success. Language once again becomes a reflection of this shift. The way a person talks about money begins to change. There is less emphasis on limitation and more focus on possibility. Statements become more aligned with growth and expansion. This is not about positive thinking in a superficial sense, but about expressing a deeper internal conviction. Words carry weight because they reinforce the beliefs that generate them. It is also important to recognize that acceptance does not eliminate effort. Action is still required, decisions still matter, and challenges still arise. The difference lies in the quality of that action. When driven by acceptance, effort feels purposeful rather than desperate. It is guided by clarity rather than confusion. The person is not trying to prove something or escape something. They are moving towards something that already feels aligned with who they are. There is a certain calmness that emerges from this state. The urgency that often accompanies financial goals begins to soften. This does not reduce ambition, it refines it. The focus shifts from chasing results to embodying the mindset that naturally produces those results. This shift can be difficult to articulate because it is more experiential than logical, but its effects are visible in behavior and outcomes. Social influences can either support or challenge this process. When surrounded by individuals who reinforce scarcity-based thinking, maintaining a mindset of acceptance can feel more difficult. Doubt can be reintroduced through conversations, comparisons, and shared beliefs. On the other hand, exposure to people who operate from a place of abundance can strengthen and accelerate the shift. Their perspectives provide evidence that a different way of thinking is not only possible, but practical. The transition from desire to acceptance often happens gradually. It may begin with moments of clarity, brief periods where the new belief feels real and convincing. Over time, these moments become more frequent and more stable. The old patterns do not disappear instantly, but they lose their dominance. The new belief gains strength through repetition, experience, and reinforcement. There is also a feedback loop between internal acceptance and external action. As belief shifts, behavior changes. As behavior changes, results begin to reflect that shift, even in small ways. These results then reinforce the belief, creating a cycle of growth. The key is to recognize and acknowledge these small changes rather than dismissing them. Each one serves as evidence that the internal transformation is influencing the external world. Fear does not completely disappear in this process, but its role changes. It becomes less of a barrier and more of a signal. Instead of stopping progress, it highlights areas where further alignment is needed. The person learns to move forward despite uncertainty, guided by a deeper sense of conviction. This ability to act in the presence of fear is often what differentiates those who remain stuck from those who continue to grow. The idea that wealth begins as a mental acceptance before physical results challenges conventional thinking because it places responsibility within rather than outside. It suggests that the foundation of financial reality is not built solely through external effort, but through internal alignment. This does not diminish the importance of strategy, skill, or opportunity. Instead, it enhances them by ensuring that they are supported by a mindset that allows them to be used effectively. As this understanding deepens, the focus naturally shifts inward. Instead of constantly searching for the next tactic or shortcut, attention is given to the quality of thought, the consistency of belief, and the level of emotional alignment. This inward focus does not isolate a person from the external world. It equips them to engage with it more effectively. There comes a point where the idea of wealth no longer feels distant or uncertain. It becomes integrated into the way a person thinks, feels, and acts. The gap between who they are and what they desire begins to close. Actions become more decisive, opportunities more visible, and results more consistent. The process continues to unfold, guided by the internal acceptance that set it in motion. There is a quiet repetition happening in the mind of every individual, a constant stream of thoughts that move so quickly and so habitually that they are rarely questioned. These thoughts are not random. They follow patterns, and those patterns are built over time through repetition. When it comes to wealth, this repetition becomes one of the most powerful forces shaping a person's financial reality. Not because thoughts magically create money on their own, but because repeated thoughts condition the subconscious mind to operate within a certain range. And that range ultimately defines how much a person allows themselves to earn, keep, and grow. Most people underestimate the impact of repetition because they associate it with conscious effort, like studying or practicing a skill. But the most influential repetition happens unconsciously. It is found in the small, everyday thoughts that pass through the mind without resistance. Thoughts like, I can't afford this, money is always tight, or people like me don't get rich may seem insignificant in isolation, but when repeated over weeks, months, and years, they become deeply embedded instructions. The subconscious mind does not evaluate whether these instructions are helpful or harmful. It simply accepts them as truth and begins to organize behavior around them. This is where the concept becomes both subtle and powerful. The subconscious mind acts as a kind of internal regulator, maintaining consistency between belief and outcome. If a person's repeated thoughts establish a certain financial expectation, the subconscious will work to keep reality aligned with that expectation. This does not happen through a single dramatic event, but through a series of small, consistent actions and decisions. The person may choose safer options over riskier ones, avoid opportunities that feel unfamiliar, or settle for less than what is possible. Each of these choices reinforces the existing pattern, keeping income within a familiar range. The idea that repetition of thought programs income level challenges the traditional focus on external factors. Education, skills, and opportunities are important, but they operate within the boundaries set by belief. Two individuals with similar abilities can achieve very different financial outcomes, not because one is inherently more capable, but because one has conditioned their mind to expect and accept a higher level of success. This expectation influences how they approach challenges, how they respond to setbacks, and how they perceive possibilities. One of the most important aspects of repetition is that it builds familiarity. The mind is naturally drawn to what feels familiar, even if it is not beneficial. This is why people often remain in financial situations that they consciously want to change. The discomfort of the current state is outweighed by its familiarity. Repeated thoughts reinforce this familiarity, making it feel normal and even inevitable. Breaking out of this pattern requires introducing new thoughts and repeating them consistently until they begin to feel just as familiar as the old ones. However, simply replacing negative thoughts with positive ones is not enough if the repetition lacks depth. The subconscious mind responds more strongly to thoughts that carry emotional weight. A statement repeated without feeling may have little impact, while a thought that is deeply felt can create a lasting impression. This is why experiences often shape beliefs more quickly than words. A single emotional event can override hundreds of neutral repetitions. To effectively reprogram thought patterns, repetition must be combined with emotion, intention, and attention. Attention plays a crucial role because it determines which thoughts are reinforced. The mind is constantly generating ideas, but not all of them receive the same level of focus. When a person repeatedly focuses on financial problems, they strengthen the neural pathways associated with scarcity. When they focus on solutions, opportunities, and growth, they strengthen pathways associated with abundance. Over time, these pathways become the default routes through which thoughts travel, influencing perception and behavior automatically. There is also a connection between repetition and language. The words people use internally and externally serve as vehicles for thought. Repeating certain phrases reinforces the beliefs behind them. For example, consistently saying, "I'm bad with money," or "I never get ahead," embeds those ideas more deeply into the subconscious. Changing language can be a powerful way to shift repetition. By choosing words that reflect possibility and growth, a person begins to introduce new patterns that can gradually replace old ones. Another dimension of repetition is visualization. When a person repeatedly imagines themselves achieving a certain level of financial success, they create a mental blueprint that the subconscious can work toward. This is not about fantasizing without action, but about conditioning the mind to recognize and accept a different reality. Visualization engages both thought and emotion, making it a powerful tool for reprogramming. The more vividly and consistently it is practiced, the more real it begins to feel, and the more it influences behavior. Habits are the external expression of repeated thoughts. What a person does daily is often a direct reflection of what they think repeatedly. If someone consistently thinks in terms of limitation, their habits will reflect caution, avoidance, and short-term thinking. If they think in terms of growth, their habits will reflect learning, investing, and long-term planning. These habits, repeated over time, produce results that align with the underlying thoughts. Changing habits without changing thought patterns can be difficult because the old thoughts will eventually pull behavior back into alignment with them. It is also important to recognize that repetition does not require perfection. The mind does not need every thought to be positive or aligned. What matters is the overall pattern. Occasional doubt or negativity does not override a strong, consistent pattern of empowering thoughts. However, if negative thoughts dominate the pattern, they will shape the outcome. The goal is not to eliminate all negative thinking, but to consciously increase the frequency and intensity of thoughts that support the desired result. Environment plays a significant role in shaping repetition. The people, media, and experiences a person is exposed to all contribute to the thoughts that are repeated. Being in an environment where scarcity is constantly emphasized makes it more difficult to maintain abundance-focused thinking. Conversely, exposure to ideas, conversations, and examples of success can reinforce positive patterns. This does not mean avoiding reality, but being intentional about what is allowed to influence the mind on a regular basis. There is a gradual process through which repeated thoughts become beliefs, and beliefs become identity. At first, a new thought may feel unfamiliar or even uncomfortable. With repetition, it begins to feel more natural. Eventually, it becomes part of how a person sees themselves. This shift in identity is significant because it influences behavior at a deeper level. Actions are no longer forced or inconsistent. They become a natural expression of who the person believes they are. One of the challenges in this process is patience. Reprogramming thought patterns takes time, especially when they have been reinforced over many years. The results may not be immediate, which can lead to frustration. However, each repetition contributes to the overall change even if it is not immediately visible. Trusting the process and maintaining consistency is essential for long-term transformation. There is also a tendency to underestimate the cumulative effect of small changes. A single positive thought may seem insignificant, but when repeated consistently, it can lead to a shift in perception, which leads to a shift in behavior, which eventually leads to a shift in results. This chain reaction is not always obvious in the beginning, but it becomes more apparent over time. Another aspect to consider is the role of self-awareness. Recognizing the patterns of thought that are currently being repeated is the first step toward change. Without awareness, repetition continues automatically, reinforcing existing beliefs. By observing thoughts without judgment, a person can begin to identify which patterns are helpful and which are limiting. This awareness creates the opportunity to introduce new thoughts intentionally. It is also helpful to understand that the subconscious mind is not resistant to change. It is responsive to consistency. When new thoughts are repeated with enough frequency and intensity, the subconscious begins to accept them as truth. This acceptance does not happen all at once, but gradually, as the new pattern becomes more familiar than the old one. The relationship between repetition and action is dynamic. Repeated thoughts influence actions, and actions reinforce thoughts. Taking steps that align with new beliefs can accelerate the process of reprogramming. Even small actions can provide evidence that supports the new pattern, making it easier to continue repeating those thoughts with conviction. There is a point in this process where the shift becomes noticeable. The internal dialogue changes, decisions become more aligned with goals, and opportunities that were previously overlooked begin to stand out. This is not a sudden transformation, but the result of consistent repetition over time. The mind has been conditioned to operate at a different level, and behavior follows accordingly. Understanding that repetition of thought programs your income level brings attention to a factor that is often overlooked, but deeply influential. It highlights the importance of what is happening internally beyond visible actions and external circumstances. By becoming intentional about the thoughts that are repeated, it becomes possible to influence the patterns that shape financial outcomes, gradually expanding the range of what feels possible and achievable until it begins to reflect in reality. Money is rarely just about numbers. It is about meaning, emotion, and the invisible relationship a person forms with it over time. Long before financial results appear in a bank account or in material form, they begin as emotional patterns that shape how money is perceived, approached, and ultimately received. What a person feels about money does not stay confined within their thoughts. It radiates outward, influencing decisions, behaviors, and reactions in ways that are often subtle yet profoundly consistent. This is why two individuals can have access to the same opportunities and still experience completely different financial outcomes. The difference is not always in strategy or effort, but in the emotional tone that underlies their relationship with money. Feelings act as signals to the subconscious mind, indicating what is safe, what is desirable, and what should be avoided. When money is associated with stress, fear, guilt, or pressure, the subconscious interprets it as something that carries emotional risk. Even if a person consciously wants more money, these underlying feelings create resistance. This resistance does not always appear as obvious avoidance. It can show up as hesitation, procrastination, overthinking, or even self-sabotage at critical moments. The person may move toward opportunities, but something within pulls them back, not because they lack ability, but because the emotional association with money is not fully aligned with receiving it. On the other hand, when money is associated with ease, confidence, and possibility, the subconscious interprets it as something safe and natural. This changes how a person interacts with financial opportunities. They approach decisions with a sense of calm rather than anxiety. They're more willing to take calculated risks because the emotional experience of engaging with money feels supportive rather than threatening. This does not eliminate challenges, but it changes the way those challenges are experienced and handled. The internal state becomes an asset rather than an obstacle. One of the most important aspects of this dynamic is that feelings often operate below conscious awareness. A person may believe they have a positive mindset about money, yet still feel tension when dealing with financial matters. This tension can be subtle, appearing as a slight discomfort when discussing money, a reluctance to check financial statements, or a sense of unease when receiving larger amounts of income. These reactions provide clues about the deeper emotional patterns at play. They reveal that the relationship with money is not just intellectual, but deeply emotional. Emotional patterns around money are often formed through early experiences. Observing how money was handled, discussed, or stressed over during formative years can leave a lasting impression. If money was consistently linked with arguments, scarcity, or instability, those emotional associations can carry into adulthood. Even if circumstances change, the emotional memory remains, influencing behavior in ways that may not be immediately obvious. A person might have the ability to earn more, yet feel uncomfortable holding on to it, leading to patterns of overspending or underpricing their value. There is also a connection between self-worth and financial feeling. Many people unconsciously tie their sense of value to how much they earn or possess. If someone feels undeserving or inadequate at a deeper level, that feeling can limit how much wealth they allow themselves to accumulate. It is not a conscious decision, but an internal boundary that is rarely questioned. When opportunities arise that could lead to greater financial success, the person may hesitate or withdraw, not because the opportunity is flawed, but because it challenges their internal sense of worthiness. Speed, in this context, is influenced by alignment. When feelings about money are conflicted, progress tends to be slower. There is a push and pull between desire and resistance, which creates friction. Effort is required not only to move forward, but also to overcome internal barriers. This can make the process feel exhausting and inconsistent. When feelings are aligned, the same level of effort produces faster results because there is less internal opposition. Actions flow more smoothly. Decisions are made more quickly and opportunities are recognized and acted upon with greater clarity. It is important to understand that aligning feelings does not mean eliminating all negative emotions. Doubt, fear, and uncertainty are natural responses, especially when stepping into new territory. The goal is not to suppress these emotions, but to reduce their dominance. When positive, empowering feelings about money become more frequent and more familiar, they begin to guide behavior more consistently. Negative emotions may still arise, but they no longer dictate decisions in the same way. Attention plays a role in shaping emotional patterns. What a person focuses on influences how they feel. Constantly focusing on financial problems, limitations, or comparisons with others can reinforce feelings of lack and frustration. Shifting attention toward progress, opportunities, and possibilities can gradually change the emotional tone. This shift does not require ignoring challenges, but rather balancing awareness of challenges with awareness of potential solutions and growth. The body also responds to financial emotions. Stress related to money can create physical tension, affecting posture, breathing, and overall energy levels. This physical response can further reinforce negative feelings, creating a cycle where emotion and physiology feed into each other. Conversely, when a person feels calm and confident about money, their body reflects that state. They appear more relaxed, more focused, and more capable of engaging effectively with opportunities. Language once again serves as a bridge between thought and feeling. The way people talk about money influences how they feel about it. Expressions that emphasize struggle or limitation can reinforce negative emotions, while language that reflects possibility and growth can support more positive feelings. This is not about forcing positivity, but about becoming aware of how words shape emotional experience. Another important element is trust. When a person feels uncertain about their ability to manage or grow money, that uncertainty can create hesitation. Building trust in one's financial decisions and capabilities can shift the emotional relationship with money. This trust is developed through experience, learning, and small successes that reinforce a sense of competence. As trust grows, fear diminishes, making it easier to take actions that lead to growth. There is also an interaction between feelings and expectations. If a person expects financial struggle, they may feel anxious or guarded when dealing with money. This emotional state influences their decisions, often leading to outcomes that match the expectation. If they expect growth and improvement, their emotional state shifts toward optimism and openness, which influences behavior in a different way. Expectations shaped by feeling become self-reinforcing over time. Social and cultural influences can amplify or challenge personal feelings about money. Being in an environment where wealth is viewed negatively can create internal conflict, even if a person desires financial success. They may feel guilt or discomfort about pursuing or achieving wealth. Conversely, being in an environment where wealth is normalized and discussed openly can support more positive emotional associations. These external influences interact with internal patterns, either reinforcing or reshaping them. The process of changing feelings about money begins with awareness, recognizing the emotions that arise in different financial situations provides insight into underlying patterns. This awareness creates the opportunity to respond differently. Instead of reacting automatically, a person can choose to introduce new perspectives, new thoughts, and new behaviors that gradually shift the emotional response. Visualization can be used to influence feeling by creating mental experiences of financial ease and success. When these experiences are imagined vividly and repeatedly, they can evoke emotions that align with the desired state. Over time, these emotions become more familiar, reducing resistance to real-world opportunities that reflect them. The mind begins to accept these experiences as possible and appropriate. Gratitude also plays a role in shaping emotional tone. Focusing on what is already present rather than what is missing can shift feelings from lack to appreciation. This shift does not directly create wealth, but it changes the emotional environment in which financial decisions are made. A person who feels appreciative is more likely to act from a place of confidence and clarity, rather than desperation or fear. There is a cumulative effect to these changes. Small shifts in feeling repeated consistently can lead to larger transformations over time. The emotional relationship with money becomes more balanced, more supportive, and more aligned with growth. This alignment influences behavior in ways that are often subtle but impactful, leading to decisions and actions that support financial progress. As this process continues, the connection between feeling and outcome becomes more apparent. It becomes clear that money is not just a resource to be managed, but a reflection of an internal state that is constantly being expressed through thought, emotion, and action. The pace at which financial changes occur is influenced by how aligned these elements are, with greater alignment leading to smoother and often faster progress toward desired outcomes.